ICORG is a group, a collaborative group, so it's a community of cancer doctors, cancer scientists, research nurses, all working together for a not-for-profit entity. It itself is a not-for-profit entity, and with the sole aim of bringing new treatments, new cancer treatments into Ireland early in their development for the benefit of Irish patients. Down to the 15, 16 years that ICORG has been around, thousands of patients have had access to treatments, in many cases years before they were available. It's a source of great pride for me and the team in ICORG to know that there are hundreds of patients, maybe more, doing well in Ireland as a result of those trials. Having a system where you can get access to those studies is very important, and in fact in the current unknown territory of drug affordability, I think a research structure and a successful research system in cancer is so important.
But that's also a very competitive landscape. You know, hospitals and doctors in Ireland are competing with hospitals and doctors all over the world. What has Ireland had to do to be, you know, more competitive for trials and attracting them in? And what do we need to do more of in future?
Ireland has had to play to its strengths. I actually believe that we are very good at clinical research. I've been involved in it now for 20 years. I think we naturally as a nation have good communication skills. We have very high quality doctors and nurses and really good scientists to back them up. So we've done really well on the clinical research side. It's a very competitive business, it's very dynamic, it's very deadline driven. We have met the mark every step of the way. And we've gone in relatively very short space of time, 15 years, from being non-existent to now taking our seat at the top table. We are in the Premier League of cancer research. We are, and have just recently negotiated in recent weeks, some of the most exciting new studies in leukemias, in glioblastoma, brain tumours, in breast cancer. We have a really exciting range of drugs coming to Ireland, leading edge research, and that's down to the hard work of everybody in ICORG, the doctors who give of their time voluntarily, and all of the people who work in a very competitive system. Every time you participate in a multinational trial, it's multinational, so it's 15 or 20 countries. The people funding and running the studies are comparing country to country. And if you turn out dragging your heels time and time again, you very quickly get left behind. Or alternatively, if you consistently score at the top of the list in terms of your organization and getting your research started, then more and more offers come to you. I mean, the amazing thing for me at the moment is that ICORG is getting many more offers of research than it can handle. Unfortunately, we could have double the number of people working in ICORG at the moment and have them all really busy, and double the number of patients having access to research treatments, but just the economic situation is such that we're having to grow slowly and cautiously.
What's interesting as well about ICORG is that it's a national organisation. It's doctors from different hospitals around the country all working together.
That's the big strength. I mean, in fact, when we started, the most important task for our first chair, Professor John Crown, was to get everybody to work together. In medicine, that's not always a given. In science, it's not always a given. And one thing he's achieved in both fronts is to bring everybody together. My early days was going around the various locations in the country, talking to very high quality Irish cancer doctors, many of whom, or nearly all of whom, trained in top institutions in the US, and explaining to them how we were all going to work together and how we were going to make a mark on the international landscape, because we are only 4.2 million people, so if we were anyway fractured, we just wouldn't have made any impact and wouldn't have got anywhere. So the great thing is to see all of these people working so closely together.
What's our take-up like on trials compared to patients in other parts of the world?
The take-up at the moment is around 6%. I don't know if take-up is the accurate phrase. What we have available as an organisation doesn't cover all cancers, and that's of course one of the difficult areas. Like you say, you get introduced to the idea of a trial, but the trials all have very strict entry criteria, and it has to be that way because, like we said earlier, we're looking at a drug in a certain setting. So we would have, in some areas, for example, breast cancer, quite a few options. We would have more than 20 different research options available for patients in that setting. But in other areas, we're just finding our feet. We're doing really well in a short space of time in melanoma, but we have 4 trials open in melanoma, and therefore probably 85% of patients may not have a research treatment option. Our wish is that we can expand this greatly. We have the support of the Health Research Board. It's very important. The government has prioritised research as a protected area, which means our funding has been cut, but just slightly over the years, I suppose. We've had a 4 to 5 year 20% reduction in our funding, but we've made good in other areas. But our wish, of course, would be to grow our funding and to have 10, 15, 20% of Irish patients have a research option. Whoever decided on this particular phrase did a real disharm to a lot of people. Clinical trials are approved by regulators. Clinical trials are approved by ethics committees. Clinical trials in Ireland are selected by a very smart and well-informed group of doctors. They are introduced as a possible positive option for patients. Nobody has been treated like a guinea pig. And there are times over the years when people who've been very appropriate for trials and maybe might have benefited from them have unfortunately been swayed by that particular phrase and that psychology and not participated. I'm glad to say that's a small group of patients, but it's still quite a widely used phrase, and it's terrible to see some of the newspapers repeat it again and again, because that's not the way it is, and that's not the way of the future.
My attitude was different because I suppose my mum had died of cancer, because I was aware of it as an issue in my family with my cousin and so on. My attitude was, you know, the medicine ain't good enough. Even if it's the best medicine you got, it ain't good enough. So I wanted anything else on top. And that's more the kind of attitude you see in the States, isn't it? Where people are more inclined to maybe go trial shopping, looking for whatever extra the doctors can give them on top of the standard medicine.
Yes, but you know, the States doesn't have a huge participation rate in clinical trials. They would have a national rate of 3%. So our 6% is better than that. Patients are very well informed in the States. They do know what's happening on a research basis, but no more than Irish patients, because the places they're looking are now on the web and available to everybody. I think patients should be informed. I actually think that a research option, I would hope that Ireland might become the first country in the world where it would be mandated, where we would do so much in the cancer research area that all patients would have some research options at the end of standard treatments if standard treatments are not good enough.
People hear about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials.
Yeah.
What are they and why are they like that?
Okay, well, it goes from phase 1 to phase 4. Phase 1 starts off with a small number of patients, and what you're looking for is initially that the drug is safe, it's okay to take it. You then go to phase 1B or early phase 2, you're looking for signals of efficacy, you're looking for signs that the drug works. Once you get that, you move into phase 3, and phase 3 is the study that you're going to use to ask the regulator to approve your drug. So you look at a standard treatment and a standard treatment plus your new agent in cancer's case. And when you find, and hopefully find, that the new treatment is better, that's the data, that's the science that's presented to the regulator to show and to look for a license, and that's the way you get the license.
But that system can be kind of clunky, and even in the case of Herceptin, you know, very controversial, because sometimes you're looking at a medicine that doctors want to get out there a lot quicker to make a difference and save people's lives. What's being done to make trials quicker, safer, more effective? Well,
the targeting of trials has made them quicker, because if you take a general population and you look at 1,500 patients in one setting plus 1,500, if you haven't selected those populations, your signal may get drowned out in all the other types of biology in the tumour. So now that we're targeting the studies, we're selecting patients at the start to be sure that they have a particular mutation or they're HER2 positive. Your chance of the drug hitting that target and being better than the current standard is much higher. And you also need fewer patients to prove this. So this is what's happened with a succession of trials in renal cancer and breast cancer, in melanoma. Instead of the traditional 3,000 patient trials, you've been able to prove that this drug is effective in 100, 200, or 300 patients. It is a rule that clinical trial medication, the medication under study, must be provided free of charge, and that is always the case. ICORG has, in its time, managed to bring millions of euros worth of free drug into the Irish setting. And not only were those drugs free, but in many cases they were available years before they were generally available. And that's, of course, a big driver for why ICORG does what it does.